What place gets creepy when you're alone? The library. I work in a big 60-year-old academic library. I have recently started using my office from time to time with everyone else still working from home. I'm ashamed to say I turned all of the lights on the floor on while I was there. The bathrooms are the creepiest. They haven't ever been updated and have a real 1960s feel. My basement looks like it should be the set for a Hostel type movie. Worst of all, my dad bought some old barber chairs he's going to restore someday. So this room that already looks like a torture chamber now has 2 beat up barber chairs in it. My uncle's recently purchased house has a basement a lot like yours minus the barber chairs. When he bought it and started renovations, he took apart a makeshift storage closet type space in the basement and found "I will be good" written over and over on the walls inside. He and his girlfriend found out from neighbors that the house was used as a residential care home. Ducked up. Public toilets at 4 AM. Rest areas are not a good place to be from dusk till dawn. My school bus stopped at a rest stop at 2 AM for our senior trip. Creepy enough at 2 AM. But most of the state is surrounded by woods, and teenagers are assholes. So instead of buddy system they'll do their business and sprint to the bus. Screw you if you're still washing your hands. Roller rink. I used to work at a roller hockey facility and often closed the place alone. The sound still traveled and it sounded like I was being followed. Hotel. I work at a hotel, and actually one time in a dozen years of me working there was one day we had absolutely no guests in house. I did not like that one bit. I hated being in that huge building all by myself. Midway up the basement stairs, after turning the lights off at the bottom. Below ground levels of a hospital. Worked third shift in a major hospital. Had to bring samples to the lab in the basement at all hours of the night. Seriously one of the creepiest places I've ever been. It was pristinely clean with fluorescent lighting which just gave it a really weird vibe to me for some reason. There's one main hall that is about 300 to 400 feet long with corridors splitting off the whole way. I always pictured a zombie from 28 Days Later sprinting towards me from the other end. I absolutely hated when I'd have to go into the basement during night shift. Worked in an old, huge hospital. You'd get off that elevator and knew you were alone. But you were also waiting for someone to pop out from around the corner. The worst was having to bring bodies down to the morgue. Just you, a tech, and a body rolling the squeaky wheels down a long ass hallway. I'd get back to the elevator to go back upstairs and get that feeling like someone is behind you so you're rushing. Even though you know no one is there. Just one of the many reasons I was glad all my patients were alive come 7 AM. My house when I've been watching conspiracy theories for hours. Especially unsolved murders and stuff. The whole show Unsolved Mysteries actually. There's a stretch of road in my hometown where a few teenagers have died in car accidents. 3 kids on 2 separate occasions in the same spot. There are few street lights and wooded lots surrounding it. That stretch of road is very creepy at 1 in the morning when you're alone in the car. Practically any room in my house after I watch a horror movie. You know this reminds me. One year when I was in grad school, I had to stay over Thanksgiving break to do work on a research grant. My girlfriend very kindly volunteered to stay with me. She had a small, even by college town standards, studio apt with a twin bed. And I lived with 3 guys in a rental house with an iceberg room and a queen bed. So we decided to stay at my place. The house was at the very end of a residential road and backed up onto a hollow with some thick vegetation and a stream. I think literally 98% of the people on the surrounding streets were also college students in rental houses. So my street and the adjacent ones were all pretty much barren and silent over the Thanksgiving break. Stupidly, my girlfriend and I decided to watch It Follows one of the nights we were there alone. That movie OFC was creepy by itself. But then being in that 50-plus-year-old house on an empty road with dark woods behind us, that night just put it over the edge. We heard everything. Every rat and raccoon and armadillo in the backyard. Every acorn hitting the roof. And at one point we swore we heard something out front. We eventually fell asleep probably at like 6 AM when the sun was coming up. Well, the next day, I go out to my car. I drove an old beat up Jeep. And believe it or not, the canvas top was unzipped and someone had jimmied the glove box and ashtray open. So actually we probably had heard someone out there. The cops said it was probably a homeless guy going around because he/she knew the kids were on break and houses were easy targets then. Needless to say, we spent the next 2 nights in my girlfriend's twin bed. The subway, when it's packed with people, it's fine. You are just rushing with the rest of the crowd to catch the train. But when you are alone, and every sound is bouncing off the walls, that's so creepy. The artificial lights don't feel as unnatural as they do when you are alone. You find yourself yearning for the sun or the stars or anything real. A small cloud of fireflies would be better than the hum of overhead artificial lights. Even the air smells stale down there. It feels like a tomb, but with a train ready to take you on the way out. Can confirm. Had a late train ride back to Boston once. Got stuck on the tracks for an hour and a half, and only then could I catch the T. Stood by myself in Andrew Station at 11 PM. I didn't know music played down there until I stood on the empty platform. Snow falling outside. The rumble of trains passing farther down the tunnels. Cheeks chapped with cold. Freaky shit. Empty school. Yes. I worked in a preschool that was converted from an old elementary school, and closing up at night was so creepy. I refused to look in any windows. You can't see anything you don't want to see if you're not looking. Dark roads in the middle of the night. The middle of the ocean. Yes, my wife, son and I went on a cruise last summer. At night I'd go out on the balcony and read when they went to bed. Out in the middle of the Atlantic with no lights anywhere. It's super cool, but also very unsettling. Seeing another ship off in the distance was strangely reassuring. Basements. If there's hundreds of spiders and other insects around you, are you really alone? The woods near my apartment complex at night. The house I grew up in. Short story. After my childhood home was sold, it was a big deal for me to be the last person of my family to sleep in it. Childish. I know. I invited my next door childhood friends to spend the last night there, and they hung out for a while and then bailed. I asked, aren't you going to stay? And they both said, nah man. Your house has always given me the creeps. I stayed for about 15 minutes after they left and finally bailed. For some reason that basic single-story suburbanite home was extremely creepy. Amusement parks. Just imagine yourself with no one to even turn on the rides. Long dark hallways. Come play with us. My thoughts. Can confirm. Been there many times, and I do not recommend. Any theater. You never want to be the last person in a dark theater. The ghost light can only ward away so much. We had a family friend who lived in an old movie theater. It was super rundown and most of the fixtures, seats, and stuff had been removed. He supposedly had grand plans to fix it up into a really cool place, but he never got around to any of it. He had his bedroom set up in one of the old projection rooms and that was about it. It was a super creepy place to visit. Night hikes. People who go alone scare me. Did some night hiking before, and for me it's when you're not alone is the scary part. You never know if that's just another night hiker or a potentially dangerous person or thing. Hospital at night. Any old New England cemetery after dark. Try ones over here in Old England. We've got cemeteries on the ground of churches that date back to before the Doomsday Book, the rather ominous name of the first national census and survey carried out in 1086 by William the Conqueror. Medieval architects knew how to make buildings that were creepy and imposing. And 1,000 years worth of weathering, and dead people has only built on that skill of theirs. Anywhere that's very dark. You are never afraid of being alone in the dark. You are afraid of not being alone in the dark. Rest stops after dark. It feels like you've entered a place where multiple dimensions touch or something. Everyone you come across, if you even do, are all wanderers that you'll most likely never see again. All places become creepy when alone. Your imagination makes sure of it. I went to visit a concentration camp in Poland once because my great-grandma had been killed there and it was a kind of family history bucket list thing. It's not one of the more well-known ones, but it is incredibly well preserved. It was a grey, foggy day and I was the only person in the entire place. I expected to be emotional, but I didn't expect to be afraid. You know when you're a kid, or heck, I get this sometimes even now, and you have to venture out of your bedroom in the dark to go to the bathroom, or whatever, and you know there's nothing there, but when you're done doing whatever it is you're doing, you can't help but sprint back to the safety of your bedroom. It felt like that. I had to physically fight the instinct to run. There's this one place near where I live called Corpsewood. The stories of the place are very bizarre and a little creepy. First comes the story of a gay couple, 2 men, living in a large house in this area. Not necessarily the middle of nowhere but surrounded by woods. This couple was murdered in their house later in their years of living there, not sure how many. The place was then claimed to be one of the most haunted areas of our region. But wait, there's more. After these events there was a cult that moved into the Corpsewood area. The cops knew of their activity, but didn't do anything about it because there weren't any reports of anyone being harmed. Thought they were rebellious at some shit. Later on the cops were called to the place and found the cult members, about 100 strong, had committed a mass suicide. This skyrocketed the insane supernatural backing on the area. I've never been there myself, but the stories I've heard have given me chills. TL. Dr. Gay couple murdered in a mansion and a cult kills themselves for whatever creepy reason. I worked on a science lab in an old university, and the 19th century basement hallways with all the lights off are from a terror movie. The flickering lights in the stairs at the end of the hallway did not make it any better. My house is actually in the middle of nowhere. It gets too quiet sometimes. Plus my house has bad history. Tell us more about this bad history. I won't go into much detail but the house has some unwanted things in it. Catholic churches. Churches in general. And also not just when they're dark. Ever been in a church in a quiet village in the day? That shit spooky AF. Movie theaters. Especially when the end credits of a horror movie are rolling. The creepy music is playing. And you're peering around in the dark, trying to see whether there are any customers still in there, or you can start cleaning. And you can't figure out whether that movement in the corner of your eye that made you jump was a real person or just a trick of the light. Worked at a movie theater a few years back. It was a busy downtown theater, and we had issues with people hiding out after the last screening and sleeping in the theater overnight. Doing the final checks of the night after all the guests had left, and you were the last person in the building, was a sketchy situation at times. A department store. A city. Where would you find an abandoned city? Chernobyl. Am I a joke to you? Our own toilet at 3 AM. Large enclosed spaces, with many hiding spots and places for your imagination to put things, like right behind you. Cornfields and backyards. The woods. I used to go hiking quite a lot in the Angel's Crest forest. Once I got lost in the middle of the day. Only for about 20 minutes. Another time I swore I was being watched while walking down a fire road. I also ran over a rattlesnake on my mountain bike, but that was more freaky than scary. My bathroom. The door will sometimes slam really loud when no one is in it. I've always blamed it on air pressure because the window is always open when it happens. Airports. I was once on a flight that was heavily delayed. Arrived at my destination around 3 AM and disembarked into a dark, empty airport that, for some reason, had a bass dancing queen blasting over the speakers at full volume. Fairly certain I transported to a different plane of existence at that moment. An Aboriginal Australian meeting place / cultural museum. Places like that get especially creepy when you're aware that not all knowledge is shared with kids and the only things you know about that are hung on the wall are war masks and weapons. That shit is the worst when it's quiet and you know you're the only one in there and a chair still scoots a little in the next room. Prison. There's a section of our facility that closes at 10 and it has the gym, kitchen, barber shop and several classroom areas. It's not manned after this time period, as all the inmates are locked in for the night. But one lucky officer gets to do rounds in this section. Most people try to get it out of the way early in the shift, 11:30 p 730A. So hopefully done by 12:30A. But sometimes shit happens, and you get busy. So there's a classroom wing where officers report hearing footsteps behind them. It's the least echo-y part of the facility, so it's especially creepy. One asshole teacher used to have a creepy zombie face placed in the window of their office, so it looked like it was a person peeking out. We finally got that shit taken down, so no more impromptu heart attacks while doing that round. But the footsteps persist. You basically jog around the whole area checking the doors to get out faster. The kitchen. There are lots of hide-y-hole areas, so you have to be extra careful, even if the count cleared okay at 10 PM. And no inmate movement has been had. Plus the phone has been known to ring, and it's static on the other end. And you have to go into the creepy back hall where the freezers are to make sure they're at the right temps. Not fun. The gym. Officers have reported hearing sneaker squeaks, like someone running on the court. Hearing and seeing basketballs bouncing when no one else is in the area. Apparently some officers don't gaff, because on their downtime after rounds, they go back up there to watch TV in the gym office. Not me. Duck that. The barber shop. Central will report getting off the hook alarms and phone calls with no one on the other end. Or static coming from there, like Central will call you over the radio and you call them from the main desk up there, which is in front of the barber shop, and they'll ask you to confirm no one is using the phone in there. They'll literally have an off the hook alarm sounding, and the phone box in the barber shop is in your line of vision. Physically locked, and yes, when you open it, the phone is hung up snugly. The alarm shouldn't be going off, it has no reason to. And yet, damn near every night sometimes, this happens. So, prison. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.